Dominic, hello.
G'day, Nico.
How are you finding the event so far?
It's been fantastic, really good networking with potential investors, so it's been a great event so far.
Awesome. So Dominic, tell us a little bit more about Hivello.
Yeah, Hivello is a deep in orchestrator and aggregator, and maybe before I talk about Hivello, I think it's maybe worth setting the scene around deep in and where it actually started from. So deep in as a concept started almost 40 years ago at a NASA. And so NASA was basically generating all of this content, all of this data with all of their satellites and telescopes around the world, but they didn't have enough computing power internally in terms of processing all of this data. And they then formed a research institute called SETI, and the goal there was to work out how to take all of this data and actually process it to see whether or not there's life or there's another planet or a star out there.
Okay.
And so they come up with this concept of decentralized compute. And so I remember I was actually a user in the 90s of the software. You downloaded the software onto your computer, and every day you got a little bit of data, and then your computer would process this data and then send it back to NASA. And this is before the advent of tokenization or blockchain. And the way you got rewarded, because there's got to be an aspect of self-interest in it, is if I found my computer or I found something, that planet or star would be named after me. So that was the whole concept of, and that was the first example of decentralized compute, basically coming out of NASA. Fast forward to where we are today with the advent of blockchain technology. There's this effectively a new network called decentralized physical infrastructure networks. Things like storage, decentralized storage, or compute, or GPU hashes to train AI models. And so the whole premise around Hivello is that we aggregate deep-ins into a Web 2.0 environment, allowing anyone, you and me, whether you have technical experience or not, to get involved in deep-in, to share your resources and get paid for it. Think of it as in the analogy of, like on Airbnb, you share your room in your house. With Airbnb, you basically share your computer and get paid for it. That's the analogy.
Okay, so your computer is basically just a computation machine that just does whatever, right? And you let people come and use it, and then interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. That's really cool. So is it a little bit like helium to some extent?
So helium is a deep in that requires dedicated hardware. We're one step removed. So we're basically working with multiple deep ins, and in fact with helium, we're working on a product that will install on a helium device and allow that device to do more than just helium, where you can add storage, decentralized VPNs, basically doubling or tripling your earnings from the same bit of hardware.
Wow. So your technology comes from NASA, and it basically allows anyone with a computer to become a user. I mean, sounds too good to be true, to be honest. So what kind of people are you looking to meet or speak to, or
Yeah. Just to clarify, the whole concept of deep in as infrastructure actually came from NASA. We didn't come up with it as a concept. Just wanted to be clear there. Right now, we're in the middle of a capital raising. I think very soon we're just about to launch a syndicate on VNTR. So that should be up and running, I think, by the time this goes live. Second of all, distribution partners, particularly in emerging markets where we can actually make a big difference to people. And then obviously deep ins themselves as we integrate more and more deep ins onto our platform.
Interesting. Cool. And what about AI? I know AI is the hot topic at the moment. What's your opinion, and how are you going to integrate it? I think that's the main theme or idea of this whole web summit is AI.
AI is super hot as an industry, and my view is we're just getting started in the space, as in the whole industry is just getting started. In order to train AI models, you need to have GPU hashes, GPU cycles, basically GPU processing power. And right now, if you're an AI company, the only place that you can go to is Amazon, Google of the world, the big centralized companies. There's a big opportunity specifically in the deep in space for decentralized GPU cycles. Companies like Akash, Render Network, IO.net, who are working specifically on that space, allowing individuals to share their computer resources. And how Hivello fits in is most of those, the Acaches of the world or the Render networks require a medium to high level of technical knowledge. You need to run Kubernetes for Acache, and most people don't even know what Kubernetes is, let alone trying to run it. And so by using Hivello, we take and do all of that technical heavy lifting, all of the crypto heavy lifting in the background, and all the user needs to do is basically install Hivello, click a few buttons, and let the system basically do it itself. And so coming back to your question, what decentralized AI infrastructure will do is significantly reduce the cost of training and running AI models, because decentralized models are about 80% cheaper than the traditional centralized models.
Interesting. And I think as well, something that's just occurred to me, like, all the big LLMs of the world, OpenAI, etc., they all run in the US, right? So what about Europe, Africa, Asia, that want to use those models? I mean, where is that computation done? Do you know what I mean? Is it done locally, or is it done?
I don't know what the infrastructure setup is, but if you're using Amazon or Google, they've got data centers and infra all around the world. So you try and get as close to the edge, as close to your customer as possible. And this is one of the benefits of decentralized infra. At the end of the day, with the big data centers, there's maybe only 2 or 3 data centers here in Europe, a few of them in the US, maybe a couple in Asia. While with decentralized infrastructure, there would be thousands and millions of nodes all around the world. So you can actually get even closer to the edge and even closer to the customer, which is typically a faster, less latency experience.
And it runs on computers or smartphones?
Specifically, the ones that I've mentioned works on computers, and Hivello works on Mac, Windows, and Linux devices. So desktops and laptops is really our core focus. We will be looking at a mobile version, but the computer for mobile is great compared to at least where it was 20 years ago. However, it's not going to match the compute that you get out of a really good Windows machine with a NVIDIA graphics card. It's chalk and cheese in that respect.
Do you think it will become a little bit like blockchain or Bitcoin mining, how you have like warehouses just of computers or processors? Do you think that will ever become a thing? Or are you hoping that it will be everyday people, just a spare computer,
I think it's a hybrid model. So today, with the big Amazon and Googles of the world, they do have data centers just full of GPUs, NVIDIA GPUs. No wonder NVIDIA is a $1 trillion company. But there are, once again, millions of people that have got a NVIDIA graphics card sitting at home,
doing nothing,
not using it, or graphic design firms who are using it 30% of the time. So there's all this latent capacity sitting out there that could basically be utilized in a decentralized way. And that's why I'm a big believer, because there's an ESG aspect absolutely to this, using existing hardware and networks, not having to recreate something new.
It's like recycling to some extent, isn't it? Kind of.
To a degree, yeah. And if you bring all of these millions of computers together, you'll actually create more hash power than all the data centers combined. There's just so much latent capacity sitting out there. When you take not just GPU, but CPU and storage, it just, ultimately creating global mesh decentralized networks. So I'm a big believer, because ultimately this goes back to the core of the internet. When the internet started, and in the 90s when I was creating our first website, we were actually hosting it at a computer in our office. Like that's what it was. We're kind of in a way going back to the ethos of the internet.
Interesting. Well, Domenic, that's been amazing. Thanks so much. I've learned a lot about Deepin, but thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
And best of luck for the rest of the website.
Thank you.